I started full-time solo game development in April 2023, just after filing my taxes. Here are my results from the first year. I'm recording from the perspective of April 2024 since I didn't have a YouTube channel 10 months ago. How it started. I'm a programmer by trade. I was laid off from a tech startup in December 2022 with a decent severance. I also had some good savings accumulated during the plague. In March 2023, after taking a break to enjoy the holidays and beaches, I started looking for remote work. I absolutely hate job hunting, and the whole experience is demeaning, busting my butt to win a prize that I didn't really want anyway. It also had an extra level of difficulty in that I'd recently moved from the USA to Uruguay. I went digital nomad when things opened up post-COVID lockdown, and worked from Airbnbs in a handful of countries, and decided to stay in Uruguay. It was a bit more complicated because lots of companies are wary of or downright against hiring people across national borders, even if they are US citizens who pay US taxes. In addition, programming work in Uruguay doesn't pay much, around 20% of United States wages. In April, after a particularly frustrating and discouraging job interview, I decided that it was time. I would probably never be in a better position to start a new business. I had the savings, the freedom, and no golden handcuffs holding me back. Although I have over 20 years of programming experience, I'm in my 40s, my Gamedev specific knowledge consisted of getting halfway through Gamedev TV's Unity 2D course, which is pretty great, and a handful of years of hobbyist work on text-based multi-user dungeons in the early 2000s. I had no art or 3D skills to speak of. I've also been writing weird electronic music that sounds like it belongs in a video game off and on for most of my adult life, and I'm a pretty good bass player. I've been in local bands that perform live at least. But I've never had any particular success or popularity with my music since I've always treated it as a hobby. The plan and progress. As a beginner with minimal resources, there were two guideposts I used for starting. The first was Thomas Brush's advice to make 2 crappy games. The second was Chris Zukowski's Missing Middle article. The first game was something I built in 2 weeks, a standard pixel roguelike dungeon crawler. Admittedly, I just published it to figure out the process of publishing a game on Steam and how to localize a game into multiple languages. It sold about 25 copies in the first year, and I have another video you can refer to if you want more detail. My 9-year-old stepdaughter enjoyed it, so that was enough to make me happy with how it's performed. I released a few updates to it after release, adding some features and improving the look a bit. The second release, although I started at first, was something that took about 6 months to build. It's a classic first-person dungeon crawler, or DRPG, based on Bard's Tale, Wizardry, and Might and Magic, and uses a lot of the knowledge and skills I had when I was working on text-based multi-user dungeons ages ago. It was really rough and way too difficult when it launched. A few rounds of patches made it prettier, easier, and more enjoyable to play. It's still a bit too challenging for some people, but I can fire it up and genuinely enjoy playing. It's sold around 100 or so copies, and growing, and has a few positive reviews. This is basically how I learned Unity, beyond the basics that I learned from Gamedev TV. The soundtrack is very 1990s MIDI. The third game was a short sci-fi visual novel. I didn't originally intend to write it, but I started working on a space combat strategy game and realized there was no backstory and no reason to care about any of the characters. This seemed like a reasonable way to develop the backstory. Most people use RenPy, but I decided to use Nanny Novel for one silly reason that has not mattered at all. I had been writing Python professionally for 10 years and was sick to death of its shortcomings and wanted to be nowhere near it for a while. The game would have turned out basically the same if I had used RenPy. During this process, I learned how to use DAZ 3D. I'm far from awesome, but I can pose characters and arrange scenes. The game has sold a few dozen copies, and 2 people have told me that they really enjoyed it, so that's nice. The soundtrack is ambient electronic music and about a half-and-half mix of repurposing songs I'd written years earlier and new material. As of the 1-year mark, there's also a 4th game that will be releasing in little over a week, a sequel to my first DRPG. It uses the same code base from the first game, but with new graphics and maps and quests. It's a much more sophisticated game, more polished, with better lighting, sound, and everything. A lot of the improvements I made for this new game ended up getting backported into the first dungeon crawler, which is a win. This feels really good because it builds on something I did before, so I get a bunch of progress for free to start with, and I feel good about the progress because it shows a visible improvement in my abilities. I don't know how well it will do, and it only has a modest number of wish lists, just under 600, but everything points to it being my best release yet. The soundtrack is the best music I've ever done, and it's a mix of Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and Spanish sounds, but in its own unique video game style. In total, I've done a little more than $1,000 in sales on Steam, plus a little more than $1,000 via Kickstarter. I still have plenty of savings, but they are dwindling. If nothing improves, I can still keep going for 3 years. I'm lucky, but I also live simply and spent a long time saving up. Although part of me thinks I should have picked a cheaper country to move to, Rent and phone service in Uruguay is cheaper, but everything else costs about the same as the USA. I met and married an awesome lady here, like just married, a week ago, and wouldn't trade that for anything. She has a great 9-year-old kid, works for a living, and is able to pay her own share of the bills, but no more than that. It hasn't really made life harder or easier. Well, maybe a little easier. She gets up before me and there's always coffee ready when I wake up, which is wonderful. In any case, it has certainly made life more pleasant. A twice deleted YouTube channel. I didn't have any measurable following on any socials when I started, so I figured talking about the journey and creating a devlog on YouTube might be a good way to generate some interest and a following. I posted about a dozen videos, about 2 videos a week, and then YouTube randomly deleted my channel for misleading commercial content. That's particularly weird because I wasn't selling anything. I assumed an algorithm glitch and appealed. The appeal was denied instantly with no explanation. I tried creating another channel only to be deleted almost instantly. They of course gave no details about what they thought was misleading or commercial, typical of Google's dev null support. To this day I have no idea why, but the room I recorded in had some weird acoustics and maybe that made the algorithm mad? From my past in website development, I know that Google has a lot of weird, unexplainable algorithm glitches and nobody in support to help remedy them. I'm sure this will get worse with everything eventually being delegated completely to AI. I did later get back onto YouTube, and I have another video about that. 2 small funded Kickstarter campaigns. It sounds impressive until you realize that I had friends and family pledge some of the money, and they were small amounts. I mostly did it for the advertising rather than the actual cash. More eyeballs, more wish lists, more people giving feedback on the demos. The money didn't cover any living expenses, it all just went straight to assets and software. I couldn't imagine trying for a larger campaign as someone unknown, with no real following or track record, especially with how skeptical Kickstarter is. So many projects are never completed, and lots of projects have taken the money and either ghosted without a peep, or made 100 excuses why they can't do it. I consider it a point of honor to deliver on promises, which is why I don't make promises often, only when I know 100% that I can deliver, so pledges have been, and will continue to be, fulfilled as promised for anything I do on Kickstarter. The goal is twofold here: creating a long-term positive reputation so I can always turn to Kickstarter if I need funding, and doing well enough that I don't need to. Using assets and paying artists for everything. Almost all of the art that I've used, other than some icons and minor 2D art that I've made, has been purchased. As a one-person company, it'd be absolute nonsense to try to do all of the 2D and 3D art myself, especially given that I don't have any 3D skills. I have enjoyed learning to get as much use out of things as possible, and changing, adapting, and manipulating existing things to work with what I want to do. I found a few artists to make capsule art. Some I would use again, and some I might not. Finding artists is easy if you put some effort into it, especially on Reddit or Twitter, because people like doing paid work. Music. I've created music for all of my releases. Like it or not, it's all been different, and I've enjoyed it. I've never had much of a following, so it's not like I'm getting a bunch of eyeballs from a pre-existing music audience. I'm using each game as an opportunity to push and expand my capabilities and composition style, and the growth feels good. Marketing, advertising, and promotion. Quality matters a lot, and it's hard to promote something that looks bad or amateur. This will get easier with time as my skills and experience improve. There are a couple tiny, super niche subreddits related to my games that have responded favorably to posts. I post infrequently and try to be generally helpful in those groups. There's a Dungeon Crawlers Discord that I frequent, and people have also been nice. Twitter has been pleasant enough, but it hasn't made much difference. It's more of a place to talk about the process and lifestyle with other indie devs. I've done various experiments with pay-per-click advertising, and some have been terrible, and others less terrible. I did a test with Google AdSense, and it was basically a useless waste of money. Maybe if I spent more time with it, it could be useful, but the cost per click was an order of magnitude too high to even consider. I did a test with Facebook ads, and it was also a basically useless waste of money. Many years ago, it was useful for promoting bands, but now it just doesn't seem great. Maybe if I put more time into it, it could be useful. I tried Reddit ads, and with their first-time buyer credit, I was able to run some nice experiments with fairly low cost per click. They didn't make a huge difference, but it seemed like it was worth it. Next time I experiment with them, I'll try using more tracking so I can see the results better. I've tried a handful of other niche and smaller sites with varied results, but nothing amazing. I haven't tried advertising on Twitter and don't really plan to, but from previous businesses, I learned that it was completely useless. This whole area is something I need to learn more about, because I haven't even gotten to the point where I have enough information that I can say, it costs me 25 cents for each wish list, or it costs me $20 for each wish list. Not that I like the idea of spending food money on something that might just be a waste in the first place. This is definitely an area where working with a publisher would be a force multiplier. Kickstarter was genuinely useful for getting a few pre-sales and wish lists, but I'm not sure that it's going to be part of my long-term strategy. It's a lot of work for a might-get-nothing return, and I've done a video on that if you want more information. Platforms where you do get all of the pledges, regardless of goal, like Indiegogo, are kind of a wasteland. I looked into games funding there, and it was almost nothing happening. I haven't considered Patreon because it just seems like the wrong approach. It seems like something more for content creators with regular output than product creators. Steam Next Fest. I participated in the October 2023 Next Fest with the first dungeon crawler, Into the Inferno, and February 2024 with the second dungeon crawler and the visual novel. Each one gave a boost to wish lists, but not that many. I got 130 for Into the Inferno, 150 for Crossing the Sands, and 80 for Across Kiloparsecs. I need to learn how to optimize Next Fest better, and one thing I did wrong was only streaming during my scheduled stream slots. It appears that many other games had streams running the whole fest. Even so, low wish list increases feel like an indicator of quality to me, and just mean that I need to get better and do better. Since then, Next Fest has made changes, so I'm not sure whether it would be the same experience. Generative AI. I am not using AI, and I have no plans to use AI in the near future. I have a few reasons for this. First, the algorithms in generative AI basically work by taking a bunch of source material and averaging it. This naturally tends toward things that are more basic, generic, and boring. Although I'm not there yet, and I'm using mostly purchased assets and models for visuals, long-term the goal is to evolve beyond that and have a more distinct style. Second, dubious provenance. I don't want to use a tool that could be using something that it doesn't have permission for and end up getting hammered for plagiarism in the future. Copyright lawsuits, no thanks. I'm no thief. Third, at this stage I prefer to figure things out myself and develop new skills. I only believe in automating things once I understand them, and people who rely on machines to do all the work for them are basically replaceable and useless. Why do we need you when we can ask a computer to do something ourselves? I'm not against using AI for menial tasks that humans shouldn't have to do, like filling out forms, but right now, messing around with it would be a distraction, and I'd gain things that have no value to me. If you are using AI to create art, it might be worth remembering two things. The world doesn't need you because anyone can do what you're doing, and when the AI you're using goes out of business or raises prices enough to be out of reach, you'll be helpless and left with nothing because you never bothered to develop any skills. Things I definitely don't know yet. It feels like I've learned the equivalent of 2 or 3 years of full-time college in this past year. That's nice, and I'd be comfortable working professionally as a Unity developer now, but it's not enough, and I'm sure there are some things that I don't know. I still don't know how to make a good trailer. I'm still on the fence whether it's better to learn the art or pay someone to do it. Probably the latter, but pricing and quality seem to be all over the map and not necessarily linked. I also don't know how to put together a good publisher pitch. I also don't know motion capture and 3D animation. Long-term goals. Just like everyone, I'd like to make enough money to not have to worry about money, make good art that people enjoy, bring happiness to the world, and all that. I want to release regularly on consoles and in the other stores like GOG and Epic, because relying on a single store, Steam, is dangerous and limiting. I want Gabe to live forever, but one day Valve might become a publicly traded company. I want to keep getting better and doing better. The lines are still fuzzy on what exactly qualifies as an AA title or an III title, but I want to get there eventually. Bonus points if you can give me a good definition of each. I want to secure a publisher for one or more future projects, both for the experience and to do things on a larger scale than I am now. I would like to eventually evolve into being a publisher. That's 3 years out at a minimum, and probably more like 5 to 7. I think contract law is fun. Non-goals. I'm not interested in being an employee in the game industry, or any other industry for that matter. I can do it if I have to, but that is not the goal. I'm also not interested in teaching. I've done it before, and I'm not good at it and don't enjoy it. I do enjoy making tutorials and showing people how to do things, but teaching an actual classroom is a no-go. Obstacles and challenges. Other than being a dumb noob, I got into a funk after my first major release, and started drinking a bit more wine than I ought to in the fall of 2023. That affected my productivity negatively. The wine in South America is incredibly good and inexpensive, and that's not really a good thing. I also had a high cholesterol scare when I went to the doctor. So I dramatically cut down on drinking at the beginning of the year. I should have known better, and I did know better, but I was sad. I also started exercising more, changed my eating habits to eat things other than just cheese and bacon, and I do feel better, have more energy, and I'm more optimistic. I absolutely knew better, but any of you who have made a go of it probably know that being in the trenches causes brain and body damage, and you have to actively fight against it. And when you're busy and focused, a fistful of deli ham from the fridge counts as dinner. I'm winning that fight now, which is nice. I really should have sorted all of that out before starting, but it is what it is. Origins on Reddit. I posted a text version of this first year summary on Reddit, which is what I used as the base for this YouTube script, and I received a lot of useful feedback. I kind of got my ass kicked. There was a good amount of, your games look like crap and you're an idiot. But there was quite a bit of constructive feedback. The main takeaway was that I needed to improve my skills and raise my standards for user interfaces and art direction. It was painful, but it's one of those pains that results in growth. After that, I decided to focus a lot more heavily on leveling up my skills. Results. Here are my quantitative results. I have 3 games released on Steam, with 2 small and 1 larger. I have 2,200 wish lists across all projects, a few hundred followers across all platforms, and a little over $2,000 in income. I feel like this is probably pretty typical for the first year of someone starting from zero. Summary. So to sum up, in year 1 I figured out how to ship and support products on Steam. It feels like I've done a metric ton, but it also feels like I've done nowhere near enough. This is a long-term play, and I'm not thinking about a quick buck. And really, this is the worst industry to do so. So long-term growth and sustainability is the focus. I'm not a supermodel, so I need to build my following the old-fashioned way, via happy customers and good reputation. How you can help. You can help by subscribing to this channel, wishlisting any games I've made that look interesting to you, and following my studio on Steam. If you play a game or demo, please leave comments and observations in the Steam discussion group or leave a review. I'm happy to make more videos elaborating on various aspects and intend to deep dive into some things, like I already have with the sales figures for Beast Dungeon. If you've been on this journey, please offer any advice or battle stories you may have. I had a roadmap for the first year, but there's a lot less wisdom beyond improve skills and do more better to be found on where to go from here for the second and third year. I'll be coming up on my second year in a few months, and I'll create a report on that too. Thanks for watching.